Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, John Chisum here. Welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, where we exist to encourage and exhort and power you up to be the best songwriter you can be, or just give you some good old-fashioned fun and entertainment here with some great guest interviews, inspiration, and just our brand of doing things around here at Song Revolution and Nashville Christian Songwriters. So thanks for tuning in, and hope that today will be no different for you, that you're going to find great inspiration and insight and a lot of encouragement here. That's just what we're all about. You know, Nashville Christian Songwriters exist to empower Christian songwriters worldwide, and we do that on a wide range of things, from free all the way up to our premium boot camp. So if you're interested in hearing about any of that stuff, all you got to do is go over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com and check out all the many fine resources we have there, including this podcast. So, you know, I'm really pumped because when we started this thing last year, podcast producer Bryant Urick, who's amazing. If you need any podcast help, he's your guy. But when we just accidentally met in a coffee shop and struck up a conversation and then decided to do the podcast together, oh my goodness, what has happened since then. All the fine people that we've had on the show, just the fun, the reach. We've had over 34,000 downloads since last April 1 when we launched the show. And just having fun. I love it. We need more fun in our lives, don't we? So last week was our 50th, like I just said, our 50th episode. So today we decided to celebrate, kind of launching into the next 50 episodes, that we would revamp a little bit of our most popular episode ever. And I think it was episode number 3 with my great friend John Mays of Centricity Music. And he was number 3 because we were just pitifully starting out and he was just willing to do it. So he jumped on and we titled the show How to Make It in the Christian Music Industry. And I think we've had around 7,000 downloads just of this one show. So we decided, because John and I go back, we used to play racquetball at the downtown Nashville Y, and then we would go eat fattening food after that in the mornings, and just so much fun. So we go so far back that episode went about an hour and a half. So we decided to go ahead and just break it up into part 1 and part 2, just to celebrate Song Revolution podcast and helping you make it in any way that you want in the Christian music business. So here's a big shout out to John Mays with Centricity Music. He is just one of the dearest people to so many people. He's the kind of guy, I thought that I was his best friend, but then I found out that he is indeed best friends with about 50,000 other people, including all kinds of artists and songwriters and producers, and just crazy connected guy. And he's much loved. He's so wise. He's so amazing. He is coming by our March 1, 2, and 3 NCS Weekend Intensive. He was with us back in November at our first one, and he's coming on board for the second one that's happening just in a couple of weeks. If you're listening after that fact, well, then watch out for the next NCS Weekend Intensive happening. It's a 2.5-day event happening here in Nashville, where you get hands-on song coaching, lots of industry networking, lots of great coaching from myself and the NCS team, and John Mays and his associate Matt Ewald are going to be with us again on this next one, March 1, 2, and 3. So if it's not too late, check it out on our website. All right, well, without any further hoopla, please welcome my dear friend, Chicken Wing, John Mays. All right, everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast from Nashville Christian Songwriters. I'm John Chisum. So good to be here. And today I'm really, really excited because I'm sitting here with John Mays, the legend, the man. You've known him forever. And I'm so excited to have you here, John. And I honestly have to say, buddy, besides a little kid in second grade named Pork Chop, you're like my best friend in the whole world. So I'm glad you're here.
Do I have a name like Pork Chop to you?
I can't say it.
Well,
no, dude.
Work on that.
Yeah, okay, all
I want
right.
a pork chop kind of name.
By the end of the podcast, we'll have a name for you, I bet. But
maybe filet.
Well, for those of you who might not know, John Mays is the hardest working, longest standing A&R superstar in the whole Christian music industry. Really, seriously, over the last 30 years. He's the songwriter. His greatest hit, Speak Unto the Mountain, and it shall be removed.
You're going to have to give some context.
We will. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Producer, A&R director for Word Records, Star Song there for a little while, Sparrow, Benson, and now for Centricity Records. John has just really outlasted every major industry A&R guy. It's just kind of crazy. And really, I mean, just all kidding aside, has had an amazing career and has affected many great artists' careers and lives, and therefore a lot of us who've benefited from John's career. What a legacy. So, man, good to have you today.
Thanks, John. I'm honored that you would ask me. I'm serious. I'm a little disappointed that you don't have a name for me. But I'm going to work through that as we do the podcast.
Filet. That's not bad. Yeah. We'll just shorten it. We'll just go to Phil.
It doesn't have as much soul as pork chop.
I can still see that kid's face. It's like...
Stay in touch with pork chop?
No. We've lost touch.
Right.
Well, you know, I mean, you were and are one of my dearest friends, but you really were the first real friend that I had in Nashville when we moved here in 1983. We had $40, no place to live. And then I met you. I think I probably met you in early 84. Larry Goss, the late, great Larry Goss, right? Cindy Morton Dupree. And do you remember that? How did that?
Well, I was playing on a lot of Larry's sessions. He was producing and I was playing bass. Maybe that's how we met.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have remembered that, but...
Well, we were brand new, and I just through a new friend met Bill Gaither and wound up getting signed to a publishing deal. And this is seriously like ages ago, 84. And I remember really trying to get just anybody to listen to me, right? And I met Cindy, who was Larry Goss's secretary at the time,
right?
And she begged Larry to listen to look at my lyrics, right? And I think that's how the connection got made. But and then we had that little stint traveling for Miss America, 1980. Cheryl Pruitt Blackwood. Do you remember that?
Oh my goodness! How could I forget that? We were her two-man band.
We were, weren't we? Yeah, and we used to write songs out behind the Spear Building, which isn't even there anymore. Is it on Music
They tore
Row?
it down, that little studio where we did so much work.
Wow.
God bless Ben Spear, because he let me use that studio, and I learned so much back there. Just producing my own demos, and it was before Pro Tools, and I had to learn to do tape and all that.
We did 2-inch tape back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Check us out.
Hey, I used to edit with a razor blade and those little laundry marker pencils on 2-inch tape, man. And you couldn't tell I was smooth. So, well, I remember back in the Spear studio, that's where we wrote probably our greatest hit together. Speak Unto the Mountain.
You think that's the one?
And it shall. But what were some others? I've forgotten.
Daniel's Band is the one that comes to mind for me. That I know you won't believe this, but I still will occasionally get a little bit of money on that.
You're kidding.
Because a couple of people recorded it. Like indie bands recorded it.
That is funny. Yeah. I don't even remember writing that one.
It was the funkiest thing we did.
Was it? Do you remember how it goes?
Yeah, I do, but I don't want to sing it.
Oh, please.
Daniel's Band. Dum, dum, dum. The ones who are standing faithful in this land. These are all John Chisum lyrics, people. Because I was just the music guy. The ones who are standing true. I'll have to play it for you.
I love
bet
it
I've
already.
got it somewhere.
I do remember Speak Unto the Mountain and it shall be removed. I remember that.
Yeah,
That's all I
another
remember.
John Chisum lyric. Just making sure everybody
Oh, well, let's move off of this
Okay.
subject real fast. But well, the other thing we did, though, for years was we played racquetball downtown at the Y, and then we'd go eat breakfast afterwards. I remember that.
At Pancake Pantry?
Yeah, I loved it, man.
Yeah.
And all the waitresses knew us. And yeah.
And Pancake Pantry is sold now.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Betty and
Joyce?
Betty and Joyce. And they were like written up in the paper and everything for being the most famous pancake waitresses.
Joyce was on David Letterman's show.
I missed that. You're kidding me.
No.
Well, I bet I could pull that up on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
They loved us.
They did.
They'd always heat up our coffee cups, and it was so sweet. All right. Well, we need to move off reminiscing into maybe just kind of who you are. A brief recap of kind of your A&R history.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Neil Joseph was instrumental in kind of getting you started in this.
Absolutely.
Like you and I, we were in that road during that interim period before you started at Word, right? So you want to share a little bit, recap some of that?
Yeah. Well, but prior to that, I'd been a bass player here in town for some different bands, and then worked my way into session world. And once I was just playing sessions, I had time to try to write, and that's when you and I were writing together some and do some indie music production, and Neil had heard some of that. Neil was running Word Records at the time. And there's probably a lesson here for maybe a lot of your listeners. I know you've experienced this. It was a big one for me. Bob McKenzie used to have that kind of advice that you live on the line of preparation until it intersects the line of opportunity. And he would talk about how preparation is all your job. The intersection of opportunity is God's job.
That's good.
And, I look over my shoulder now and I see all that writing we did together, John, all that indie production, records I would produce for zero budget and all that kind of stuff. All that was preparation for a breakfast one morning with Neil. And I'd played on some stuff he had produced too. So we kind of knew each other and had worked a little bit closely together. But he had just heard some of that indie stuff I'd done. And at this breakfast, he said, I need to hire an A&R person, and I think you'd be good at it. And I literally didn't know what it meant. I'd heard the term, but I didn't know what it meant. And isn't there that thing, it seems like so much in the music business, where the thing comes to you? God's at work. You would have never gone to look for that. Like I wouldn't have known to go look for that. And Neil is a recruiter today, like a headhunter guy, still kind of doing that, like seeing something in somebody and calling it out. So I'll forever love him and be grateful for him. But it was a big decision because my bass playing career was going well, and I really thought I would probably end up a producer. So I was kind of laying all that down to take my first real job I'd ever had in my life, right? With a desk and a office and policies and all that kind of thing. But I started there in September of '87, and I've kept doing that same job for different labels ever since then.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Yeah.
It's crazy. As far as I know, and I know in Christian music, I don't know about general market music, but I don't think there are any A&R guys my age, I'm 60, who are still doing this job.
That's great.
I don't get it. I don't know why I'm still at it, but God has given favor for some things I've signed. And as an old friend used to say, you still know where 2 and 4 is.
Yeah,
and I think what he meant was you still have a sense of what feels good and when a song works and when it doesn't. And he called that, where 2 and 4 is.
I agree with that, but I think there's a lot more to it. Yeah. I mean, just with you personally, knowing you as well as I do, over all these years, you have a knack for bringing out the best in people. Just you're known as a friend, the friend's friend. I don't know, man, but just you have such. I don't know. Just, what would you call it? There's a charisma about you where
cash.
cash. The money helps. It does. But, for those of you listening who might not know, John's worked with people like Cindy Morgan, Matt Redman, Scott Crepane, Aaron Schust, Point of Grace, and the Passion Recordings, and is now having huge success with Lauren Daigle.
Yeah.
So congratulations on
Thanks.
that, But I know just from observing your life, you bring out the best in people. And I feel like you did that for me. I'm a much better person. I never got any better at racquetball, but I'm a better human being now. So then for knowing
John.
you, but
that's a lot to say. But I'm grateful if that's true. But that's kind of hard to hear, I guess for anyone. But I hope it is true. I'm sure I could give you a list of artists who would say, "Hey, let's check that." That hasn't been the case.
Well, when people put their for those listening who might not know really what A&R is, it really is the artist and repertoire function of helping oversee. It's not really management. That's a whole different function for an artist, but it's really the artistic direction. Song selection, production, general artistic development, right?
There's kind of 4 functions. Those are a couple of them. One is kind of the talent scout for any label has an A&R person or persons looking for their next signing. So that's that talent scout kind of role. And then, you're probably most of the work we do is on songs. So you have an artist who's needs to record and they've written 50 songs and you're trying to help them get to 10 or 12. What's the best playlist of songs we can put together for this record? And a lot of that is just song work, right? Like there may be a great chorus, but that's all it is right now. So that needs some woodshedding and it's time to go back. There's a lot of time spent there. And then, like you said, overseeing the production of the record. So you're not producing, but you're overseeing, because I might have 3 or 4 records going on at one time, and I'm not in the trench with the producer, but I am overseeing what's going on there and making sure the trench is heading in the right direction,
Right.
And then there's the relationship part of it that you kind of mentioned. And there's a weird thing with A&R people where that relationship starts with you. So there's always kind of a connection there, I think, that extends beyond the job. That artist needs to have a good relationship with everybody at the label, right? But there's just a deeper, maybe it's that investment of I believe in you. And that's a tight bond. Any creative person is kind of thirsty to hear that, for someone to say, that's good, I believe in it, and especially I want to invest in it, So that creates a deep relationship that, like you mentioned, some of those people I've worked with years ago that I'm still really good friends with, partly because of that kind of relational investment in them in the beginning. And managing that relationship through difficult times, through ups and downs in their career, is a part of the job. It's just the hardest part to describe,
Mm-hmm. Of all the people that you've worked with, were there any, in the past or even present, were there any pivotal moments where you felt like something was absolutely transformative, relationally or artistically? Anything that stands
in
out?
Me or
both? I mean, in you and the relationship, in their music, something that you felt because of discussions or your direction, or I don't know. Do you know what I'm kind of asking? Like anything stand out where you feel like somebody was headed one direction, but because of your relationship, it exploded in a whole other direction?
I don't know. That would probably be over-exaggerating what happens a lot, which is you're constantly giving feedback and suggestions and constructive criticism, depending on how the relationship can handle that kind of thing. And I would say it's more like nudges, where between here and 3 records down the road, there is a whole new sound, a whole new expression of that person's art. But we got there a little more slowly, than a dramatic kind of transformation. There are times when, like we have an artist now named JJ Weeks that I heard him play live. After we'd already done a record, I heard him play live again, and he sang that old song, Georgia, the old Ray Charles song. Yeah. And you're sitting there going, we've completely missed what this guy's best at. Mm-hmm. And you go back and go, how do we, we didn't capture any of that in trying to make a record for Christian radio.
Right.
So how do we start to work that into, it's obviously an honest part of who you are, and we've completely missed it. So there's a lot of those kinds of stories.
Yeah. So what do you do? I mean,
Well, we went back in and recut a song that was on that existing record called Count Them All. And we Matt, that you met earlier, who works with me in A&R, just finished it last week. And we, from the seed up through the finished product, we went this kind of bluesy route. And it's not necessarily a route that Christian radio embraces. We'll find out, but it's certainly different, and it has a lot of that sort of soulish, bluesy expression in his vocal that we completely missed before.
Wow, can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Christian radio and just kind of the industry.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know. Let's just take just a couple of minutes. Let's don't spend too long.
It's fascinating.
I know it is, but
I'm still learning about it.
I guess we all are, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the people that are following us here at Nashville Christian Songwriters dream of having a song on the radio. Mm-hmm. And almost every conversation I have with a potential client, when I ask them their goals and dreams, they always say that. They want to have a famous artist record one of their songs and be heard on the radio, if not become an artist, right? I mean, this is like everybody wants this, and so few.
It's a giant platform.
Hey, we're going to take just a quick break from the show so that we can let you in on some amazing things happening around here at Nashville Christian Songwriters.
Are you a Christian songwriter wishing you could be heard by the right people in Nashville? Yeah, we get it. You've been writing for years, but you have no idea how to be heard, how to get your songs out there, or how to connect your talent with opportunities. You feel stuck and wonder if you'll ever get a real break. NCS Bootcamp is your chance to be heard by taking your songwriting to a level you've only dreamed of. It gives you hands-on, personalized coaching and mentoring to help you think and write like a professional Christian songwriter determined to impact the world with your songs. If you're ready to empower your songwriting dreams, go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com/bootcamp to book your free songwriting breakthrough strategy call today. Become the songwriter you were born to be with NCS Bootcamp.
Well, I just hope that you'll take advantage of that and check it out. All right? We bring you good stuff here on the Song Revolution podcast. So back to our episode. Maybe just give me your view on the state of the industry.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go backwards, because I would say when you say state of the industry, there's a significant shift happening right now away from terrestrial radio, even though we haven't necessarily felt that, to a streaming world. Like, we use the word consumption a lot more now than we do sales, and consumption would take into account streaming, Pandora, that kind of thing, which in 2016 was responsible for the music industry taking an upward turn in terms of revenue, the first one since, I think, 2001.
Wow.
We've been on a declining revenue model, and streaming is beginning to make up for some of that. So it was an encouraging year last year. But Spotify, Apple Music, all these streaming resources have nothing to do with radio, right? And it's kind of an encouraging from the creative side, because it's not dependent on that radio listener. So now let me talk about that for a sec. If someone's interested in how those songs get written, you have to kind of go back to even, John, in our early days of the 80s, music played on the radio was still, much of that was still being determined by the program directors themselves, and sometimes even the DJs that had a lot of power or a lot of listeners to a show would decide what's going to get played. And this is true for all formats of music. In fact, Christian music was late to this, but somewhere in the 90s, the idea of consulting, the radio consultants started to show up. And these consultants said two things you're doing wrong. One is you don't know who your listener is. And second, you don't know what they want to hear. So a consultant would come in and say, you've got to identify your listener, and then you've got to find out what songs that person likes and play that song for them over and over again. So Christian music adopted this probably in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So here's how that begins to affect a songwriter. The first thing they found out was who's listening or who they want to listen is a 39 to 54-year-old female, white woman. Becky. And a lot of your songwriters have probably heard that name. And and that's, there are a lot of Becky jokes in the industry because this listener is personified with that name. So a 39 to 54-year-old white woman, already the lane lines start to close down. They get narrower about what she wants to hear. Then they adopted this system of, there are kind of two ways it happens now, of testing what she likes. One is online, and it's the most common, and you can go on your favorite station and sign up for their member panel, or sometimes you get some perks from doing that. But you go on once a week and you rank songs for them that they post, usually 1 through 5, or you'll just say, I'm tired of that song, or I want to hear it more often. The more expensive and scientific thing they do, and they usually only do this once or twice a year, is they actually have an auditorium test, which means they'll bring in about 100 Beckys, people who would say they only listen to their station, and they each have a remote dial, and they'll listen to about 100 15-second snippets of songs. And during that 15 seconds, they're either turning that dial down or up, and that's all being aggregated into a computer and ranked 1 to 5, and they never play anything below a 4.
That sounds so cold.
Oh, it is torturous to go to one of these testing sessions and hear your little 15 seconds of your song go by and just watch the graph go down, just like keep the razor blades away, right?
That's terrible.
Well, and of course, what always ranks the highest are songs they already like, the songs they're familiar with. So Oceans and Casting Crown songs and I Can Only Imagine, those are always going to rank the highest. So when you listen to, let's say, K-Love, you've listened now for 2 hours and you've only heard one new song. That's because their testing tells them she wants to hear her favorite songs over and over again. So there are consultants out there who consult their stations, never play a new song. Let some other station take that risk. You keep playing her favorite songs, because obviously her new songs aren't her favorite songs because she's never heard them before. So this is a terrible dilemma for songwriters.
Yes.
Now let's talk lyrically for a second. Most Christian radio station, K-Love, which is the 3,000-pound gorilla out there, it makes up half of all the listeners of Christian radio. It's giant. Their mantra is positive and encouraging, right? Sometimes you'll hear safe for the whole family. When you think of what's positive and encouraging, and you think there's a lot about my Christian experience that isn't positive and encouraging, well, you're not going to write that song for Christian radio. They're not going to entertain that idea. So there is a creative challenge in how do I write a song that's positive and encouraging, that hasn't been written before, or at least expressed that way, that appeals to the musical taste of a 39 to 54-year-old white woman. Well, you got a lot of options now that are clipped off, right?
Wow,
yeah. So in this very room we're sitting in right now, John, which is the Centricity Writers Room, I know that I send people over here to write with Becky on their backs. And they sit here going, okay, what can we write that she's going to respond to? That when she hears it, she's going to turn that knob up. And that's no way to write a song, right? Now, I also want to say two things. One, not every song from our artists do we expect this kind of thing. You only do this for your singles and the songs you hope are going to be singles. And hopefully you're recording another handful of songs where you can say what you want to say, how you want to say it, and that's important to you. Thank God for that, right? Second is the other side of this coin, which is all the emails and voicemails and texts that I collect. And last year, we read a bunch of these at our Christmas party, of these incredible stories of people whose literally their lives are changed because of an encounter with the song. And it almost always starts with, I heard this song on the radio.
Wow.
So it's still a platform that God uses in amazing ways. And I mean, some of these stories are, from the most dramatic thing of I was going to take my life, and to, of course, my marriage was in a ditch, or I've been suffered from depression all these years. All these real life situations that are happening, somehow Christian radio, it still reaches those people, and God uses it, and he changes people's lives because of it. So I don't want to poo-poo the whole thing. I'm just saying, from a creative songwriting perspective, it is a tremendous challenge to write a song that Christian radio will play. I'm going to throw one other difficult layer in there, and I'll shut up about this, I promise.
I'm editing all this out.
Okay, right. One of the most difficult things is also they're getting about 20 to 30 singles a week, new songs. They can add about one because they don't add very many new songs, right? That's not what she wants to hear. So they can add one or two new songs a week. So you think about the competition. Every label is sending them songs, and you got labels like Sparrow and Providence sending, sometimes they're working 20 singles at a time.
Wow.
We work probably 3 to 4 at a time, and every other label out there. These are the signed artists. Then they're getting about that many from independent artists, people just trying to get their songs into the hands of someone who might make a decision and put their song on the radio. And there are also indie radio promoters that help indie artists or stuff like that. The odds of you getting your song added at radio, even if you're a label, a known artist, are so low just because of the real estate. There's just no room for new songs at Christian radio because they have to play these songs that she wants to hear. I didn't mention the other dilemma at Christian radio. Most of it is listener supported, right?
Right.
So not only is Becky carry a lot of weight in terms of what she likes to hear, she's also writing a check every month to support them. Well, that gets really messy in terms of, do they want to play something that might make her change the dial because she is their livelihood? Isn't that weird?
Wow, yeah.
Now, general market radio, obviously, except for PBS, doesn't deal with stuff like that. It's all advertiser supported.
Right.
And there are some Christian radio stations that are, but not very many.
Well, dude, I'm thoroughly depressed. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And my new nickname for you is Chicken Wing.
Oh, I love it. Pork chop and chicken wing.
Pork chop and chicken wing.
I'll take
your
it.
barbecue, your hot sauce chicken wing. Well, that's crazy. It's bleak. I mean, it really sounds bleak. And one of the reasons that we're calling this podcast The Song Revolution is because everybody I talk to says, well, I hate Christian radio. And it's like, and first of all, don't hate. I mean, just it's an oxymoron to think that there are Christian haters out there. Don't curse the darkness, light the candle. And
that's why I talk about the amazing letters and stuff we get. You can't deny that.
But on the other side of it, for our listeners who would aspire, my great buddy Terrence, a writer that I've been working with for a few months, that Jeff Quimby's done some great demos on. I mean, he really wants to be right smack in the middle of this. And what about him? He's an indie artist now. I'm going to do an EP this year. And I've really been working with him. I believe in him. He's got a great message, a lot of things he's been through. And all the people that he represents, do you see anything looming in the future as an alternative? Is it streaming? Is it?
That's why I started there. I hoped that by starting there, I wouldn't be throwing cold water on the listeners. But this really is, in some sense, the same level of revolution that happened when digital music started, when iTunes and Napster and all that came around. It may be even larger. What we're hoping for now, what the industry is hoping for, that more and more people will will start to pay subscription, the monthly fee, the $10 a month. If most of the listeners did that, we would be back into the 90s in terms of the amount of income that was coming in. And it's kind of genreless too. Like if you listen to Spotify's Discovery playlist or Apple Music's Best of the Week, it's not limited by genre like Christian radio, like any radio station is. The thing that I said for Christian is true for country, it's true for hip hop, it's true. They all test their listener and play the stuff that listener wants to hear. So Spotify or streaming companies don't necessarily do that. Now, what's starting to get interesting is the leverage that these, especially Spotify, because it's the biggest, they're starting to talk about maybe signing their own artists directly.
Wow.
They're starting to talk about, we have people that are promoting to Spotify playlists just like they promote to radio stations, because an addition to a really big, and I'm talking about like a 20 million follower playlist, can really have a significant effect on an artist's career. So I know artists who have ended up in playlists on Apple Music and Spotify that they're completely shocked that it showed up. But somebody at that company, most of them, there's a move, toward human creation and away from the bots that were doing that in the beginning. Somebody at at Apple or Spotify heard this song somehow.
Wow.
and added it to a playlist.
That's great. Yeah.
That can happen.
I wrote a little post. We have a Facebook group, and those of you listening who might not be part of it, we have a group on Facebook called Successful Christian Songwriters, and currently we have about 3,500 people worldwide, and
fantastic,
very active group, hundreds of people posting, and it's really exciting to see the interaction there. And I drop content in, about every other day, some songwriting tips and inspiration, and I'll do some blog posts. And I wrote one yesterday, and I started off with saying that the people at Spotify must really love me because they gave me a curated list of the kinds of things that I like. And
yes,
I actually liked it. It was like, oh my gosh, they know me. It's like, I know. It's like they've got a little camera up in the corner of the room or something, but I was liking everything they picked for me. They curated it pretty accurately, and I didn't fast forward or skip any of it. And but it's pretty amazing. I wonder, back to what you were saying, I mean, you think of HBO, who would have thought, 10 years ago that they would have HBO series, HBO movies, Netflix movies and series. But I mean, who would have thought, right? I mean,
I know.
And YouTube would probably be next, right? YouTube series or no? Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think everybody, Apple is certainly doing this now. Everybody's looking at creating their own content because of this.
Right.
Just watershed of success that's come. Now, Netflix has produced a lot of shows that nobody's ever heard of, There's going to be misses in there, but their hits have been giant. But from this topic, that quote, that Bob McKenzie quote that I started with, that you live on the line of preparation until it intersects the line of opportunity. There's so much biblical, scriptural correlation to that idea. And of course, I think one of the big ones is the parable of the talents, and this notion that you're expected to do something with what you've been given, right? That poor first guy, he buried it. He brings it back, and it's terrible for that guy. Even though you can kind of hear his heart, like, I didn't want anything to happen to this.
Right.
I brought it back just like you gave it to me. Clearly disappointing the master. The other two guys, one has less than the other has. They both go out. One brings back less than the other, but they both get the same result. Well done. In other words, this is what I wanted you to do with what I gave you. Well, they're out in the field working, That's the metaphor, at least. So that idea of preparation, or what does someone do if they ever want to have their song on the radio? What's the right next thing you can do to answer that question, which I think all of us in the creative world will be accountable for? What am I doing with what you gave me? Can you answer that question today with your creative work? And if so, that's probably a step toward the next thing that God's going to do in terms of bringing fruit from your labor.
Right.
That's the part you can't do.
Yeah.
Right? You can't bring the intersection of opportunity. You can put the seed in the ground. You can till the soil, cultivate it, water it, care for it. But at some point, you're helpless for fruit to come from that.
Right.
And so a lot of us, guilty as charged here, we focus on the fruit, which we really can't do much about, rather than the work. That's our part. That's our contribution to this kingdom work. And I don't know if that's a help to anybody who's like listens to what we're talking about with Christian radio and just feeling despair over it.
Right.
But I promise you there are people whose songs are on Christian radio today who have felt that way. Probably most have felt like, how in the world would I ever cut through this?
Yeah.
You know? And they just kept writing better and better songs, listening to podcasts like yours, learning how to do the right, maybe next thing that they don't know how to do now, and adding that to their kind of creative collection and moving forward. Now do that on the next song and the next song. And I don't know, people probably maybe do that 5 years before the next real breakthrough happens or the fruit begins to come.
Right. But do you think that radio success might be a false measure of success?
Well, sure. I think no one can see us here, but I've done this little analogy before of holding, maybe your listeners can do this in their car right now, but
depends on what you're going to do.
Like you hold your arms out as wide as they will reach. You just both arms as far out as they will reach, and you think of that as the kingdom, right? You can't make a body expression that's as big as the kingdom, right? But let's say that's what it is. Now bring one hand up and get your thumb and forefinger as close together as you can, where you just see a little gap between them. And that's the Christian music industry, right?
Right.
So Christian music industry, kingdom. The Christian music industry is just a tiny part of what God is doing through music in the kingdom. It's just not as well seen, right? You mentioned Cindy Morgan earlier. When my mom had a stroke and was passing away back in 2013 in a nursing home, Cindy came to that little room and basically sung my mom into heaven with just some of her favorite hymns. And that's never going to show up on anybody's chart. It's never going to be recognized. Someone who gives their gift of music and songwriting to the world, that's never celebrated. That's never recognized. It's in such small doses in terms of our popular culture, right? But there are so many things to do with your gift in terms of what am I doing with it that are never measured in Christian music circles. So to try to think of that expanded, man, there's so much opportunity to take a few songs into some sixth graders and play them for that class, to do music therapy, even if it's not even formalized, just, there's a song that might help in this situation, to sing at someone's funeral, to be the bearer of encouragement or good news in a dark situation, basically to bring your gift to bear in the current culture that we're in. There's so many ways you can do it. Play at a freaking coffee house, Yeah. And you think no one's listening because it's just loud and clinky out there. And then someone comes up to you later and says, do you have that one song you did? Do you have it recorded? And in a way you want to go, you're kidding, you heard that song? But yes, they heard it. So I know that it's the biggest platform, it's the most celebrated, it's the most visible, but it's only one, and it's just a little bitty part of all that God is doing in music. So many people have found their way to Christian radio by the weirdest examples. And one, your listeners may have heard of an artist named J.J. Heller. JJ has had a couple of songs do well on the radio, but they tried, her and her husband Dave tried for a long time. And then she had, remember the So You Think You Can Dance show?
Yeah.
Is that the one with the amateurs that are?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the contestants on that show picked a JJ song to dance to on that show. The program director for KSBJ, the largest non-commercial station in the country, is watching that show that night. He hears that song. He plays it the next morning on his show, and his phones blow up. And that song was a life changer for JJ's career.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't make that happen,
no,
right?
Right.
They had nothing to do with that song being an international hit. Nobody worked it. Nobody promoted it. Just these weird dots of God's work being connected. And so I've been around long enough to see that happen enough times that I believe God does that. The Christian radio thing is, through a label is one way to do it, but it's only one in how many millions of ways that God could use.
Well, I love you bringing it back down to the personal stewardship of a songwriter or an artist, because I deal with so many aspiring writers, for whom that radio success seems to be like the pinnacle. But I love bringing it back down to what are we responsible for today? What is the one next thing that we can do to obey God, but also to please Him with our efforts and to co-create with Him, even if it's just working on a verse or a lyric, or a melody, or rewriting, and not considering, really not judging ourselves a success or a failure based on other people's response, but to be writing just for an audience of one. So thank you for bringing that back into this discussion. And I'm still waiting on God to breathe on Speak Unto the Mountain. I'm kind of holding out.
We may be waiting a while, John.
Speak unto the mountain. Well, on the Centricity website, there's a little portion called How Do I Get Signed? And you talk about, it looks like 3 different elements, work ethic, songs, and talent. Did I leave one out?
There's
4.
The uniqueness. There's 4. Yeah.
Uniqueness. Okay. Yeah. Can you just briefly, because I think this will help people, because I try to help the writers that I work with understand that the thing I hammer home more than anything is you have to learn to think like a professional songwriter. Hey everybody, I hope that you know by now that we here at Nashville Christian Songwriters are all about empowering you to fulfill your call to become a great Christian songwriter. And the best thing that I think you can do is to join a like-minded community of believing songwriters dedicated to fulfill that call. So I want to invite you to jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com, even right now, to check out what we call NCS membership, where you can go deeper into all the resources that will kickstart your creativity, unlock hidden songwriting abilities that you didn't even know you had, and take some important steps towards becoming the songwriter that you were born to be. I believe that you were born to be heard, and NCS membership helps you get there. I'll see you next time.